Welcome to the Holistic Wealth and Health Podcast. Your co-hosts, Jason Smith and Brian Bibbo, will inspire and teach you how to prosper in your mind, body, and spirit, not just your financial life. Joining forces with field experts, Jason and Brian are here to help you focus on what matters most in your life, living well.
You're about to listen to part 2 of our conversation. To listen or watch part 1, we've added the links you need in this episode's description. We hope you enjoy the continuation of today's episode.
I want to dig a little bit deeper there. So the cardio, right?
Yeah.
In a perfect world, how many days a week, and we all know, nobody's going to run a perfect schedule every week, but
Right.
how many days a week would you suggest strength training or resistance training, and for what duration? How many days per week some type of cardio, elevated heart rate for 30 plus minutes of time? And how many days per week more flexibility, mobility,
Right.
yoga, stretching, that type of exercise?
If I had my way,
Yeah.
I had a magic wand and say, if you do this. Yeah. So I would say if I could get 3 days a week of patients to do resistance training. And
Okay.
resistance training comes in a lot of different forms. And so what I try to, if you're into doing weights, right? Because there's a lot of different types of ways to do resistance training. But for example, if we take weightlifting, for example,
Yeah.
I tell a lot of more women than men, I have to talk about this, is a lot of women are doing, okay, my 10 reps are done. I'm doing my thing and moving on. They're having a whole conversation. I'm like, that's great. That's better than doing nothing. Of course,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm going to take anything. But really, if you're trying to build muscle mass, your last couple reps, you should not be able to have a whole conversation. You should be like, cannot lift this anymore, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's 8 reps or 10 reps or whatever reps. That's what I mean by weight training. And I don't want you like struggling where your whole body form is,
Keep
then you're
good
just
form, but go to failure at the end, right?
Yeah. And you should be able to, the last 2 reps should be, you're doing it, but you're like, I'm done. So when I'm talking about weight training, that's what I really try to encourage people to do weight training like that. And then if they like Pilates or Pure Barre or something like that, I think there's a space for that as well, because you can fatigue your muscles that way. So 3 days for resistance training. Honestly, cardio is interesting, right? I'm going to say 3 to 5 there. And the reason I say 3 to 5 is this. You don't need to do an hour. So I'm not personally a big fan of the steady state. Let me just run the same
Right.
speed right now. I think there's a place for that. Sometimes you just want to check out and go for a run or cycle or go for a long bike ride. I think there's definitely a place for that. But I think where I like to see more cardio is a little bit more intensity, even incorporating some HIIT style, the high intensity, where it's a quick, you shouldn't be doing HIIT for more than 20, 25 minutes. If you're doing HIIT for an hour, that you're not doing HIIT. No one should be able to do HIIT for an hour.
Yeah.
So HIIT is very good for so many different things in our cellular bodies and all that. But HIIT really should be maybe twice a week, 20 minutes, and then the other days for cardio, it really should be something you enjoy. Like you said, pickleball, right? Tennis, or going for a bike ride. And really the other whole piece of this is, remember, when people are exercising, you're exercising for what? Maybe an hour. If you're good, you're doing like an hour a day. But if the rest of the day you're sitting, moving from one place to another place, again, it's better than not doing any exercise for that hour. But the other piece that I try to add on when I keep trying to add on is try to get those steps in, right? Try to get at least 7,000 steps a day. That way, that's what's called it's called NEAT, NEAT. Basically, it's a non-exercised thermodynamic effect of just doing the laundry and doing the dishes and just doing this. And that plays such a big role as well as that exercise portion.
Yeah, that's great. How about yoga? Where's I
Yeah,
guess
so I
yoga,
think
depending on which one you do, that is resistance too.
Right. Are you talking about
Yeah.
more? So the flexibility and mobility, I really think if people can do it at least a couple days a week for 10, 15 minutes even, that's great. I think there's so many free outlets out there on YouTube, Instagram. You just Google video on mobility. It's like a 10-minute video for shoulders and posture and hips. So I think that's an important, and I think, like you said, yoga is great for resistance too.
Yeah. Good. All right, I'm going to add back in 3 days a week. I'm only doing 2 days of
There we go. I love
resistance
it.
right now. You know what it is? I fell in love with pickleball so much. I
Yeah.
play that 3 days a week and then do yoga. I probably do yoga more towards 5, 6 days a week.
That's great. So you're probably getting a good amount of resistance in the yoga, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when doing the vinyasas and
Yeah.
sun salutations and all that good
Those are
stuff.
tough. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's exercise, and we can talk about diet as well.
Yeah, let's talk about nutrition. We'll talk
Yeah.
about diet. I'm curious as to what your take is on meat, right? On red meat. What's your take on this? Is very controversial.
Oh,
And you hear like really smart people saying completely
yeah.
polar
I
opposite.
know. And it's interesting because, yeah, it's
Organic grass
all over the
fed,
map.
by the
Yeah,
way.
it's all over the map, right? Everyone should do keto. Everyone should do paleo. Everyone should be vegan. Everyone should do this. And it almost drives me crazy when I'm
Right.
sometimes listening to other people talk because I'm like, no, everyone's body is different. Everyone's genetics are different. Everyone's gut microbiome is different. Like,
Right.
and so when you're asking me about red meat, it's a loaded question because so let me give you my spiel of what I majority like to ramp patients towards. And then we talk about some of these other things, right? If you look at the studies for heart health, right, it's going to be Mediterranean, right? Okay, so the Mediterranean lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
And then it's Mediterranean, and you tweak it a little bit more, it's pesco Mediterranean, right?
Okay.
With fish. And then you tweak it a little bit more, it's going to be vegetarian, Mediterranean, pescatarian, right? So those kind of 3 arms, including it. And so that's what I try to promote. Listen, fruits and veggies, for the most part, no one's going to say, oh my gosh, stop eating all that fruits and
Right.
vegetables. Now, obviously, if you're diabetic, some certain fruits you have to be careful of. They're higher in sugars. I always say berries are amazing, high fiber, most bang for your buck with antioxidants and low sugar. Vegetables galore. Then when you go into the starches category and the carbohydrates, that's probably one of our biggest problems that's where insulin resistance comes in. Diabetes and actually a lot of inflammation in the arteries is from insulin resistance. And so I'm definitely not anti-carbs. I'm personally not a fan of keto because most people end up doing it, to me, not the right way. And also it's not very sustainable and then everything reverts. But that being said, if you're going to incorporate carbohydrates, which I think can actually be beneficial, it's a portion is the problem, right? Most people are eating like this much spaghetti, right? And then this much of the vegetable, right? Yeah. So it's portion control is part of it.
Complex versus simple carbohydrates,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And then that's the other piece of it is, are you eating an English muffin, which is carbs, but also what else is in that English muffin? Are they using olive oil or avocado oil to make it? Probably not. They're probably using some hydrogenated oil. And so if you can stick to my thing that I tell patients to remember that it's easier. Most people have 3 meals of the day, right? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If all 3 meals, you don't need to have a starch. Maybe, for example, for breakfast, you have eggs and egg whites and avocado or fruit. Good. Maybe for lunch, then you have a portion of a complex carb, and then for dinner. But if you already played that card in your breakfast and lunch, then for dinner, you better be careful. That's like my quick and dirty way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
And then when you go to fats, I generally encourage olive oil and avocado oil. So avocado oil is a higher heat. You don't really want to cook olive oil too high. And then obviously nuts and seeds and all that kind of stuff are very beneficial. When you come to proteins, this is with the big debate. Fish versus red meat versus chicken. One thing I'm definitely adamant about is stay away from the processed meats, right? A lot of the cold cuts, deli meats. And let me preface all this by saying I'm an 80-20 person. So I don't expect I don't eat 100% good all the time, right? I don't think that's a sustainable way of living. So when we're talking about lifestyle, it's what can you do that you can actually sustain? We're in this for the long game, right? I don't want you to just do something great for 3 months so your labs look good and then go back to what you were doing. Yeah. So let me meet you where you're at. Let's figure this out together. So that all being said, do I tell patients, hey, never have a sub sandwich? Of course not. But it better be in your 20, not in your 80. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm always going to be a proponent of, if you're going to pick fish versus red meat versus chicken, I'm always going to say, pick the fish, but wild fish, right? You don't want to pick farmed fish and all that. And I don't mean shrimp and scallops and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking more on the just a regular wild fish. And then incorporate some chicken if you can get away with the healthy organic chickens. The red meat, I'm not against it. I try to limit it to once a week if it's possible. If someone says, oh, I only eat it twice a month, I'm not going to tell them to eat it once a week. But all that being said, so there is a lab test called TMAO, right? And so that lab test is actually very interesting because what it does is the higher TMAO you have, the higher risk for coronary disease you have. Now, TMAO is basically a function, it's made in the gut. So it's a function of what your gut microbiome is doing and what your kind of genetics are, right? So I've had couples see me together and they both are like, obviously they're eating the same stuff, they're in the same household, and I'm doing my whole spiel like I am with you. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just get a TMAO on you and see where we're at. And so I had a couple where the husband's TMAO was so low, right? Eating all kinds of meat, but the wife's was through the roof. And I'm like, listen, he's okay. I'm not going to take away his meat, but I got to take away some of your meat. And we worked on it. And she's like now like cooking all kinds of vegetarian stuff and her cholesterol like plummeted, right? It just came down significantly when she did that. But for him, I didn't have to be as aggressive because his TMAO was okay. Your original question, it's loaded because again, not one diet to me fits all.
That's great. No, that's great. A little hack that I do, it might be helpful for people, is whenever I go out to a really nice restaurant, I get fish. I never get steak. I never get pork. I never get red meat because I can make that stuff at home really easy and really good. And most places can make that stuff pretty good. But fish is more challenging to make really good at home other than the basics. So I always try to get fish whenever I go out. That way it takes the thinking out. I know I'm going to do the healthy thing and maybe learn a new way to make the fish too at home.
Yeah, in our household, it's interesting because I'm vegetarian, right? I don't eat any meat or any fish or I'm not vegan. Wow. So I have eggs and egg whites and all that. Okay. And then my husband he loves to eat everything, but he's married to me. So it's this thing, but we came to a compromise with fish because I don't know where you guys live. It's easy to get wild fish or not. Here it's half dozen or another. So we just took the complicating factor off the table and we just order a subscription service and they drop off wild Alaskan fish to our house. It's frozen. He throws it in the freezer and then he pulls it out and throws it in the air fryer and we call it a day.
It's actually a really good point because at a restaurant, even a really fine dining one, you don't know. I guess you do. A lot of them are not going to be farm raised, right? Certain types of fish.
Hopefully.
I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and that brings up a good point about eating out is, of course, who doesn't love eating out? But just remember that restaurants don't care about your health. They're going to load it with whatever oils and salt and whatever they want. So that should be part of your 20 again. But go out, have a good time, enjoy yourself. Don't stress out about it. But if you're eating out like 6-7 meals a week, it may be time to rethink, okay, I might need to be a little bit pickier at restaurants instead of just eating whatever.
And from time to time, I do eat out a lot, just business and stuff like that. But I tell you what, if you're going to nice restaurants, you'd be surprised how willing they are to cook your food in olive oil, right? Or ask the question, is it grass-fed butter? And what is your take on butter? So I heard the red meat. What's your thought on
and 100%. So
that's another big controversial one.
It is. Right? Well, and eggs, right? Eggs is another big.
Yeah, you're right.
And so butter, I'm not against butter. If you're going to do butter, grass-fed, again, it's portion. So a lot of this stuff is portion, right? So red meat, chicken, all the meats are more saturated fat, okay? Fish is monounsaturated fat or polyunsaturated fat, the unsaturated fats, right? And so that's a big difference, right, between the kind of fat. So it's not, okay, one piece of chicken or one piece of red meat's a problem, but then you add some butter on top of it, right? Then you add some cheese and you add some heavy whipping cream. So everything adds up. So that's why it's your butter. That's the problem. No, what else did you eat? If that's the only real saturated fat you're eating, I don't care. Eat the butter. But I'm obviously not a fan of these processed margarines and all this kind of stuff, right? If you're going to do butter, do grass-fed butter. Again, portion, right? Don't have like half of a stick. portion it out. Same with eggs. I'm absolutely not against eggs at all. In fact, I tell my patients have 1 or 2 a day, right? But really the yolk that you eat from the egg, there's a lot of nutrients in it, right? So I think it's actually beneficial. But then once you're starting to eat 3, 4 yolks, I think you're probably losing out on the benefit. Maybe throw in some egg whites with that 1 egg and yolk and make whatever you're going to make, an omelet or scrambled eggs or something.
Yeah.
So I'm not against eggs at all.
And pasture raised, so they're eating the worms and bugs instead of the feed, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of also, if you look up the studies and what pasture raised is versus organic versus cage free, it's mind boggling.
Yeah. We have chickens, so
Oh,
we
great. So you're
meat
definitely,
as well as for eggs. But it's, at the end of the day, the pasture raised is they go out there with other animals and they're eating all the organic and natural foods versus just feeding them the chicken feed.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's good stuff. How about sleep? How many hours should I be getting each day?
If you look at the data, 7 to 8, I don't know how many people are actually getting that much. The thing is with sleep, right? The less sleep you have, it's when you wake up, and this just on your own, not you, but just in general, we all know this as human beings. If you sleep less, you're more hungry, you're more cranky. And what is your body internally doing? Cortisol is going up. That's a stress hormone. The hunger hormone's going up. And then that's not even talking about sleep apnea, right? Then you throw in this whole other ball game of sleep apnea where you're actually cutting off your oxygen levels throughout the night. Obviously, that's not good for your brain or your heart, right? Sleep is, we all know, okay, we shouldn't be looking at our phone right before we go to bed. We shouldn't be watching TV, but it's really like, how do I really make those healthy habits? It's practice like everything else.
Yeah, exactly. And then what do you do? What do you personally do for stress management?
It's a great question. So I most mornings, I can't say I do it 100% of mornings, but most mornings when I get up, and I try to have my patients do this as well, is before I jump out of bed, I will think of 3 things I'm grateful for. And I tell my patients and myself, small things. I think we all know we're grateful for this, we're grateful for that. But when you actually think about it, right? Because think about the other way, right? Most of the times when we get up in the morning, we're like, okay, I got to do this. I got to do that. I can't believe this person did this. I can't believe they said that. Just all the negative chatter is what our brains, or we pick up our phone and start doing whatever, scrolling. So the 3 things, small things that you're grateful for. And then I will do about 10 minutes, maybe at the most, of just some deep breathing. Oftentimes I'll put my hand on my heart and I'll actually just visualize love coming in, not to be cheesy, but just something, peace, love, calm, whatever you want to call it. And really think about that and then breathe it out to the world, or breathe it out to somebody who maybe needs it, that someone in my life. If I don't have 10 minutes, I'll just at least do 10 breaths of that. So that's how I start my morning off. And that's been really helpful for stress management, because I find the days I don't do it, I'm probably a little bit more edgier. I'm probably a little bit more snappier. I love reading. I love listening to podcasts. I love just learning about different ways and managing stress. And it's about managing stress, right? It's very hard to get rid of stress. Sometimes there's people in our lives that need to go, or jobs need to change, or different things like that. But for the most part, like you said, it's about managing the stress, because if you look at it, most people are here on the stress response, which is the cortisol, the adrenaline, all the things that actually they've seen it down to the DNA level that actually affect aging. And then you have the relaxation response, which is the dopamine, the serotonin, and just all those kind of things, which were just out of balance. And so I will also, besides what I just mentioned, probably midweek, check in with myself. I see myself as like a tank. And if I'm like down here, I'm like, okay, it might be time to just maybe cancel a few appointments, cancel a few things that I think I have to get done, and just do some self-care, whatever that looks like, whether it's reading a book, going to the beach, listening to music, being with friends, incorporating some sort of hobby that I enjoy doing. Because all too often our tanks are here. We know it because we're getting more tired. We're not sleeping good. And then we just keep going and going on the hamster wheel. So it's also just being aware of your own self. So
what your body needs, basically, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And anything else, anything you in closing that you'd like to share with everybody, Dr.
Yeah, so I think this has been a great conversation. I feel like I got a lot of stuff out there. Part of what I do on the holistic aspect as well, besides the stress management and the diet, is vitamins and supplements. I get that question a lot. I'm not going to go into long details about it. I do say that a lot of times when there's vitamin deficiencies, which nowadays with our soil and all that stuff, there's significant amount of vitamin deficiencies.
Yeah.
It's just when you're getting your blood work checked, maybe ask your doctor, hey, can you throw in a vitamin D level or vitamin B level, things like that. Because sometimes it can take, I've had patients who are just extremely fatigued. I've done the heart test and it's really because their vitamin levels are just so terrible. And I've adjusted them and fixed them for them and they feel like new people. So sometimes it's small like that. And then the other thing, that I think is very important is really for preventative, get your basic testing, start with that. If you can get in with somebody who knows how to do advanced lipid, that's another option. And then get a calcium score too. So calcium score, we touched on it, it's that CAT scan. It's a scratching the surface of knowing if you have plaque buildup or not. It's an amazing, simple, usually $100 test that you get a quick scan of your heart and it shows you if you have some plaque. Now, again, it shows if you have hard plaque. So if you're 40s or so, it might not be as indicative. But if you're 40 and you already have a little bit of hard plaque, that's a problem, right? Because you shouldn't have any. Okay. And then you might want to get the next level test, right? Which is a scan of actually looking at the heart arteries. There's AI technology now called Clearly that can look at plaque. We have so much more information now. To me, knowledge is power. And let's get what we need to get and then make a plan.
Yeah. If we want to reach out to you, One Heart Cardiology. So how do we get a hold of you or what's it look like?
So I have a website that actually has a lot of information about my practice. It's just my name. It's really drmonashah.com. I have a blog actually, which I've written tons of articles on all the stuff that we just talked about, what foods to eat, vitamins, supplements, stress management, calcium scores, advanced lipid testing, and that's on WordPress. It's drmonashah.wordpress.com. So if people like to read more about everything we talked about. And then if you go on my website, you'll see my email and how to get a hold of me. I have an Instagram page too, Holistic Heart Doc. So lots of ways.
Awesome. Congratulations on your new business. And this has been a really insightful conversation. So thanks for joining today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's been great.
All right. We'll see you on the next podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Holistic Wealth and Health Podcast. We hope we inspired you to make changes so you can live your best life. If you want to find out more about what we do, or if you want to have a holistic wealth and health financial plan, please call 456-833-7000. Please subscribe to the podcast and share it widely with your friends and family. Financial planning and advisory services are offered through Prosperity Capital Advisors, PCA, an SEC-registered investment advisor with its principal place of business in the state of Ohio. J.L. Smith Holistic Wealth Management and PCA are separate, non-affiliated entities. PCA does not provide tax or legal advice. Insurance and tax services offered through J.L. Smith Holistic Wealth Management are not affiliated with PCA. Information received from this podcast should not be viewed as individual investment advice. Product discussions and illustrations are hypothetical in nature and will vary based on many factors, including, but not limited to, age, health, product, insurance carrier, and product design. You should consult the insurance carrier website and policy for detailed information. For information pertaining to the registration status of PCA, please contact the firm or refer to the investment advisor public disclosure website, www.advisorinfo.sec.gov. For additional information about PCA, including fees and services, send for our disclosure statement as set forth on Form ADV from PCA using the contact information herein. Please read the disclosure statement carefully before you invest or send money.